Hello and welcome. So today we're going to be looking at how to find the roots or solutions of quadratic formula or equations. Um, so what I have written here is basically an example of a quadratic equation that we might be given. Um, y equals 2x squared minus x minus 15. So what we're going to go through is how to take this equation and find its roots. And so to do this, we're going to remember that the real roots are the same as the x-intercepts. So of course, we know that in order to find x-intercepts, we're basically just going to replace our y with 0. So to solve for our roots or solutions, I'm going to take the equation I'm given and just make it equal to 0 on the opposite side. And from our previous video, we know that the roots are the numbers that bring the factors to 0. So before I do anything else, I'm going to try to write this equation into factored form. So I will multiply my 2 and negative 15 to get negative 30. And then when I think of numbers that multiply to 30, I know that I can do 5 times 6. So in order to get a negative x in the middle, I could take my 5x minus 6x to create a negative 1x. So that tells me how I'm going to set up my box. So I've got 2x squared, negative 15, and then I've got a 5x and a minus 6x. So I'll go through and factor each row. So I can take the 2x from the top row, which puts an x here to make x squared. I can take a 5 from the bottom row, which means I'm going to need a minus 3 on the top so that I get 5 times negative 3 to get the 15 in the bottom corner. So there's our factored form. So we need a 2x plus 5 and an x minus 3. And we know that that needs to equal 0. So now that I have my factors, and I know that roots make the factors equal to 0, I can basically take my factors and solve them out to get the roots. So the x minus 3 is going to be the easier one to work with, so I'll probably write that one down first. So I know x minus 3 has to equal 0. So my root or my solution would just be a positive 3. So to get my 2x plus 5 equal to 0, I might actually need to do a little bit of solving. So of course, we know we can subtract the 5 on both sides. And if we have 2x equal to negative 5, we know we can divide the 2. So our second root is going to be negative 5 halves. So to recap, our standard form was y equals 2x squared minus x minus 15. Our factored form was y equals 2x plus 5 times x minus 3. And the roots of our equation are x equals negative 5 halves and x equals 3. So let's see what this would look like if I put it on the graph. So we said that the solutions to our equations represent our x-intercepts. So I'm going to mark the x-axis at positive 3 and at negative 5 halves, which is basically negative 2.5. And then because my x squared is positive, I know that my parabola is going to open in the upward direction, so I should get something that looks like this. So because we came up with two real roots, that means our graph is going to have two x-intercepts. So if I happen to give you a graph that has two x-intercepts, you know you're supposed to get two roots when you factor it. In this next example, I want to point out that they may not always give us the equations in the most friendly way possible, right? So we may have to simplify a bit before we can solve it. So if I'm given something like this, where the x squared and the x are not on the same side, or more importantly, that I do not have a 0 on one side of my equals, I'm going to need to rewrite the equation in order to be able to solve it. So it doesn't technically matter whether the 0 is on the left side or the right side. So usually what we'll do is just figure out which side has the least amount of things on it, and that'll tell us where the 0 should probably go. So in this one, I noticed that the right side of the equals only has a 7x. So I'm just going to subtract 7x on both sides to change the right side into 0. So on the left, none of that stuff combines. So it's all just going to copy down. I am going to write it in the order that we normally see it, which is to have the x squared first, then the x term in the middle, and then the constant by itself. And then, of course, on the right side, if I do 7 minus 7, that would give me a 0x, which is just going to be our 0. So once we have one side equal to 0, then we can go through with our factoring just like we did in the last example. So I have my standard form. Now I'm going to convert everything into factored form. So once again, I look at whatever multiplies to make -8. So I could do 1 and 8. If I do 1x minus 8x, that would give me -7x. So those are what I want to write in the middle. And then we'll go through and factor it. So I factor an x from the top row, which means I need an x here to make x squared. I need a +1 on the bottom row, which means I need a -8 on top so that my bottom corner multiplies to -8. So my factored form will be x plus 1 and x minus 8. So to get my roots, once again, we need to bring the factors down to 0. So if x plus 1 equals 0, then x equals to -1. And if x minus 8 equals to 0, then x would need to be +8. So to recap, we started with x squared minus 8 equals 7x. To solve the equation, we first converted into standard form so that we had a 0 on one side of the equation. We then converted into factored form so that we could easily find our solutions. And we then set our factors equal to 0 to figure out our roots or our solutions. That's all I have for this one. I will see you guys next time.